Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Startup Impact Summit. Today, we're super excited to have 4 aspiring entrepreneurs coming here to share their experience. We are going to address green finance, how to mobilize green trillions in a 40-45 minute sections. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Helene, our moderator, to kickstart the sections. Please give round of applause. Great.
Thank you, Felix. Very delighted and honored to be moderating this panel. We've got a very diverse, panelists joining me. My name is Helene Lee. I'm the co-founder of GoImpact. Have always been active in the sustainable finance space. I'm a boring banker turned consultant, turned fintech aficionado, and of course, a big champion in terms of driving the sustainable finance agenda. I'd like to introduce the panelists to you first before we kickstart into the very vibrant discussion that we have today about mobilizing green trillions. First up, ladies first, we've got Ines Galichon from ENEA Consulting. Ines, would you like to say hi to our audience?
Hi, everyone. I'm Ines Galichon. So I'm a manager at ENEA Consulting. We are a dedicated consulting company to sustainable finance and energy transition. I've been working in that field for over 10 years, and we are supporting corporates, startups, investors to navigate energy transition and sustainable finance opportunities across sectors and geographies. So thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you, Ines. Now, turning over to the two gentlemen in alphabetical order of the first name, we have Alex Ypsilanti from Quantifeed. Alex, would you like to say hi to everyone?
Sure. Hi, audience. I'm Alex Ypsilanti. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Quantifeed. Like Helene, I was also a boring banker in my previous life, but I now run Quantifeed, an exciting fintech company in the wealth management space, or wealth tech as it's known. We've been around for 7 years, and we help financial institutions in Asia develop digital wealth management channels into their consumers, otherwise known as robo-advice platforms. And we've done that very successfully with DBS in Singapore, Cathay United Bank in Taiwan, and also CITIC Bank here in Hong Kong. And very excited to be on the panel today. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Now, Tilo Bonow. So would you like to say a few words, Tilo, to our audience?
Yeah, hello. My name is Tilo Bonow. I'm based in Berlin, Germany, and I run with PIABO PR, Europe's leading technology PR company. That means we're helping a lot of high-growth tech companies, also in the field of green tech, climate tech, clean tech, and of course, sustainable focused companies to really get the attention that they deserve through media attention, social media, content marketing, and really give them a platform that they really can connect with the best investors, journalists, potential employees, and really conquer the world with their ideas. On the other hand, I'm also an investor by myself. I'm invested in more than 10 venture capital firms around the globe, so I have a pretty much global view on all of it, and of course, working also with a lot of VC firms that have a clear focus in sustainability, and so very excited to be here and share my thought and knowledge with you.
Thank you, Tilo. Now, with such a diverse and global panel, I'd like to start off with the basics first, because when we say mobilizing green trillions, what exactly does sustainable finance mean for each and every one of you? I think probably it can mean slightly different things for different people. So let's get the basics, the common denominator established first. What does sustainable finance mean to you from your different perspectives? Maybe we start with the lady, Ines?
Yes. So actually not very easy to give one single definition for such a broad concept. But in my opinion, sustainable finance means financial products that would help companies or so startups or larger corporates to really implement finance assets, so with real economy and real impacts on sustainable challenges and opportunities. So when we talk about green trillions, we will focus more on environmental aspects, And when we call more like sustainable finance or even social finance, we'll probably focus more on social aspects. So with very different thematics like social and affordable housing, for example, and we have seen transactions in the market. And not even worth mentioning that with the post-COVID situation right now, many new social bonds, COVID bonds have been issued. So yes, the focus will probably be even more on social aspects in the very short term right now in the recovery, not forgetting about the climate challenges and more environmental focus. So it's bringing finance with impacts, basically.
That's a great definition. Thank you, Ines. So you mentioned roughly like the E, S, and G, environmental, social, and of course, governance aspects of it. Now, I wonder if the gentleman here, from the wealth tech perspective and also from the marketing perspective, maybe Alex, is there any slightly different take you have on what sustainable finance actually means from a wealth tech and robo-advisory platform perspective?
I'm not going to be controversial and disagree with Ines. I think she was spot on. I guess where I focus my attention is around investment decisions. So I guess what's prominent in our definition of sustainable finance is about how institutions and investors make decisions with respect to their investments, with very much a focus of having lasting benefit, both for the investor, for the corporation, and obviously for society at large. And we're certainly looking at those ESG factors or criteria and making sure we're integrating them in those investment decisions. And certainly from our perspective, it's not just about financial returns, although we've seen that financial returns in an ESG context can actually be far better than sort of the conventional market, often referred to as the societal alpha that's available in the market. But it's also, of course, something that's good for society, good for the planet, and speaks volumes to sustainability in terms of certain initiatives that are taking place. And the good thing is, that in terms of initiatives, there are a whole lot of things happening around the world, and also very much close to home in Hong Kong. I'll leave it here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alex. I love the part about societal alpha, because I think that, in times of challenges like the current one, many of the ESG funds have actually dropped less or perform a bit better than others. So that is probably something we might want to come back to later. But I really want to pick the brains of Tilo right now. As an investor as well, what do you see as sustainable finance? What does that mean to you, Tilo?
But first of all, I think it has all to do with responsibility. Do I really just see it as a marketing or, let's say, a PR phrase, or is it really deep in my heart? And especially in times of crisis that we are all in right now, the world is a little bit in a turmoil. I think it really shows if it's just kind of greenwashing or sustainability washing, or people really mean it. And it shows also what's behind the facade. And especially in crisis, it shows if really people mean it, what they say, and what all this talk about purpose, about mission, vision, etc., is really true, or is it just literally just PR? And I think to make it as concrete as possible, for example, here in Germany, we have an initiative that called Leaders for Climate Action. And I think it's very to the point, what is it all about? And it's not just around where leaders come and talk about climate, it's really about action. And to make also here a very concrete example, there are the top 20 VC firms in Germany part of this initiatives, and they committed to put in their contracts for both sides, for the LPs that investing in their funds, but also for the founders, startups that they're investing in, a clause, a sustainability clause that really makes clear what is important to them and that they really commit to the sustainability goals and really doing everything they possibly can to build a sustainable companies that not destroys our future of climate and really benefits to it. And I think that it's a very concrete action where the most prominent and most important voices of the VC industry in Germany committed to. And I think it's a very strong signal. And we don't have to forget that also the startups, I mean, they might be small right now, but they are really receiving a lot of attention due to their innovation strengths and are perceived really as the next frontier in this field. And I think this kind of radiant power we should all use together for sustainability in the economy and really give them the attention and shine a spotlight on the startups to show what really they can drive. And even big companies, I think, can learn what startups really build, because they are free from any borders and from any limited thinking. They really want to change the world and make an impact. That's why I think especially the startup industry becomes here a crucial mission critical role too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Tilo. I love that actionable kind of initiative. How, you know, the VCs and the finance industry, actually you bring together the LPs, the GPs, and so on in an actionable kind of initiative beyond a kind of PR agenda. Which
it's really a clause that really is in every term sheet, in every contract, right? It's really very, very concrete, and I think that's important. I mean, we all have a lot of ideas, etc., but I think in the end of the day, it's all about the action and the execution.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. And until we can actually bring this from being a PR agenda to a business and investment agenda, I think it will be very difficult to really mobilize the green trillions in a very structured and you know, movable kind of manner. Which brings me to my next question. Actually, you know, with the current COVID crisis, which has really happened so suddenly and so severely, that impacted, I think, every industry, that no matter what industry we are in, I'd like to, you know, kind of gauge your thoughts around, do you see this as a friend or a foe in terms of sustainable finance? Has that been a headwind or a tailwind in terms of pushing the sustainable finance agenda? Maybe this time I will start with Alex first for a change. Alex?
Yeah, thank you. Definitely a friend. I wouldn't say a headwind, but certainly a tailwind. ESG and sustainable investing was certainly something that was gaining in popularity, particularly since 2015. And, you know, we've seen it in recent months pre-COVID, but certainly as COVID unfolded, it sort of brought it to the core, and it made it very much a household term, if you like, and that's something we saw in our own platforms to some extent. Given what I said before, we provide product to a lot of retail investors around the region. And certainly what we witnessed, as well as what we were reading and watching in the industry, there's been a resurgence of interest, particularly among retail investors, around the ESG and sustainability topic. I don't think this is going to go away. You know, as we said before, ESG-related stocks and funds have shown good outperformance over the COVID months. I think that is sustainable. So sustainability is sustainable, if you like, beyond COVID. I think what's, I guess, a challenge, you know, whether you call that a foe, I don't know, but I think institutions do have access to a lot of the information and data that you need to make good investment decisions from an ESG point of view. I think what's tricky is when it rolls down to retail investors, a company's sustainability and how they're scoring in terms of ESG becomes a lot less transparent. And certainly retail investors don't have the same level of access that institutional investors do. I think that's a great opportunity for fintechs, particularly in the wealth tech space, to help with that. But that certainly is a challenge that we need to solve for retail investors. You're on mute, Helene.
I'm sorry. Writing on what you just said, I was just wondering, have you seen increase in kind of client demand, whether it be from the institutions you partner with or some of the retail investors that are on your platform? Have you noticed sort of like increased demand from the investors community?
Yeah, for sure. We've noticed increases from the retail, the end customer, the end consumer, but also with a lot of the prospects, the institutional clients that we sell to, consumer banks and brokers. There's certainly been a marked uptick in conversations we have around the ESG topic. To be honest with you, that was already happening before COVID anyway, but certainly our sense is that COVID's only gone towards supporting this, and post-COVID, whatever that world looks like, which we're getting a glimpse of now, hopefully, these ESG and sustainability finance discussions will definitely continue.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. I come from the private banking side myself, throughout my career. So I've seen exactly the same kind of uptick, across the private clients space as well, not just among the retail investors. I'd like to turn to the lady for a moment. Ines, have you seen sort of like COVID being, a driver pushing this agenda ahead?
Yeah, so I totally agree on Alex's point. So you mentioned one aspect specific to the wealth management industry. What I say is that there were many already elements favorable to sustainable finance much before the COVID. I just see the COVID as a kind of catalyst and accelerator for both corporates, public institutions, regulators, and any kind of investors to be even more aware and to act concretely on putting sustainable finance agenda in place and concrete sustainability-driven business strategy, either for corporate players, but also investment strategy for large institutions. So we've been working in my company for many corporates for years, and we definitely see that the COVID has not stopped them. So fortunately, we have been affected in our business the past few months because energy transition, climate transition, and more broadly sustainability is now on the top of the agenda of some corporates. And I think that we see a shift that now the topic is not anymore handled, or won't be anymore handled by communication or marketing direction, but really by the top management and the business units. So, and I think it's definitely a key change, and we see exactly the same on the investor side. So much more the wealth management side, but for large public institutions like asset managers or asset owners, thinking about pension funds or infrastructure investors, they definitely try to embed it even more, the impact management strategies, sustainability strategy with the investment strategy. So having very focused investment thesis to unlock sustainable impacts, obviously not sacrificing their financial returns, otherwise is not sustainable on the long way. So I think it's much more a catalyst, so a friend, but all the elements were there already. So if just to conclude on the tech side, so I'm not that much a fintech expert, but much more clean tech expert. You have already a lot of clean tech technologies that are viable, commercially viable. Now it's just a matter of scaling up the uptake of those clean tech. And definitely the COVID will be a catalyst. Maybe not on the very, very short term, because some of those clean techs are still not at the price parity with traditional techs, but in a few months or years, and even more with public regulators pushing harder for a green recovery, it would be scalable.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Ines. And I think you touch upon a point, being an accelerator, a catalyst. Also, there's the tailwind from the regulators, people that regulate listed companies like the stock exchanges. We've seen them in Asia Pacific demanding greater disclosure and greater transparency around sustainability reports from companies. So that it's not just a PR a report once a year that you can outsource to a consultant. I wonder if you have something to add to that.
Yes, and so we've seen that in Europe, so there is a technical environmental group working on what we call a European taxonomy on sustainable activities. So it's quite a long-term kind of research slash regulatory work. But very interestingly, in Singapore, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, the MAS, have launched work groups to see how green finance principles could be broadly implemented for Singapore, and hopefully to have a broader impact in Southeast Asia. So we definitely see, I would say, not a greater green finance focus in the region, which is extremely positive. And I think that the major challenge is for Asian countries to find their own voice, not trying to follow only the European standards that for many reasons can't be applicable as they are right now. So it's also a huge opportunity maybe for Asian financial centers to speak up and to have their own also framework. We just saw that China is updating its green bond principles, so removing clean coal technologies from the green bond. So there are some actions taken even during these very special times.
Yeah, thank you, Ines. Now, I'd like to turn to the VC investor perspective that Tilo brings, to the table here. Tilo, how do you see this COVID situation, friend or foe, tailwind, headwind? What are the observations you could share with us?
It's hard to say that such a global pandemic with so many trouble in the world can have also some positive sides. But of course, I mean, what I'm positive is about that I still see in the last couple of weeks and months that funds are being raised, right? It literally feels like every week someone says, oh, I closed my new fund, which is positive. I see that still investors making even remotely investments into startups. I by myself was invested recently in a fantastic blockchain company that helps industrial manufacturers a lot. So I think there's still a good dynamic. Obviously, valuations have changed. Obviously, opportunities have changed a bit. And of course, many VCs are focusing first on their current portfolio to stabilize them and make sure they get enough money. Of course, there are some changes, but you see that also VCs can change quickly and do then deals remotely, for example. From the startup perspective, I have to say, also here, it seems that B2B companies are much more resilient in the crisis than B2C companies. That's definitely what we see. Also, what I hear when it comes to sales cycles, a lot of companies now thinking about new solutions, new partnerships, and of course, the entire digitization process. So that means that startups that usually maybe had a sales cycle of, let's say, 6 months, now telling me, oh, now we're getting deals done in 6 weeks because decisions are made faster, and which also, of course, has a sustainability impact that maybe old solutions that are more traditional and also structured more traditional now replaced with new modern startup technologies, etc. So that's definitely positive. And also in these days, I see that more and more dedicated venture vehicles and funds towards sustainability are funded. For example, Übermorgen Ventures out of Zurich, who are focusing very much on the part of carbon neutrality. We see Ecosia World Fund, for example, who have massive impact here, but also initiatives that before COVID was in place, for example, from BMW as foundation, the Respond program, which really goes and invests alongside many of the SDGs. They are now getting much more attention in the media and from startups because everyone is now looking more towards this direction. So there are definitely a lot of positive things, but of course we don't have to also realize there will be some structural changes. things will not go back to normal, at least not in the next couple of months. But it has also made a lot of what people thinking, and think that in general for the industry so far, I can say it has also a lot of positive side effects. Yeah, sometimes it needs a shadow, but there is much more light again.
Yeah, thank you, Tilo. I think it's very encouraging to hear that people are investing, continuing to invest, like yourself, and also funds are closing. So there is a healthy level of activity. Now, I'd like to take this opportunity to turn to, tech, because you mentioned tech just now, how that could be an enabler, and a further accelerator to drive, mobilizing the green trillions. Maybe I can go back to Alex to start with about how do you see tech from your robo-advisory platform perspective? How do you see that as moving forward the agenda more effectively? If you can give a couple of examples, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Well, tech is an enabler in so many industries, and certainly from our perspective, we see fintech almost synonymous with financial inclusion, which obviously is heavily correlated in our minds to sustainability. So, if we think about it, given the scalability and the price at which technology can offer or can be used to offer financial services, no longer just to high net worth and private clients, but also be able to scale it down to retail investors, I think that's a critical component. And in that way, we see fintech very much as the enabler and something that can remove barriers regardless of your net worth and regardless of the size of your organization. And we've seen that in all aspects of finance, be it payments or micro lending, and obviously, wealth management as well. So this ability to offer a customized or personalized service, which obviously technology is very good at, particularly with the growth of things like artificial intelligence and machine learning, being able to understand someone's risk profile or preferences or capability to take on risk. But I think, as a next level, and I think we're just beginning to scratch that, to be able to understand someone's ESG or green profile. So what exactly, as we said before, we know that retail investors have a big and growing interest in ESG, but we all want to invest in something that's meaningful beyond just generating returns. How can we use technology to better understand what is our personal cause? Because we all see ESG slightly differently, in the same way that we all see market opportunities differently, and we want to be engaged on this topic in a slightly different way. So I think technology not only has the capability to create these new distribution channels for ESG funds and ESG products more broadly, but also to personalize them based on this idea of a green profile, if you like.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. And I think, you touch upon something which has been one of the pain points as well in terms of, enabling investors to adopt this more massively. Some of the data gap, how investors are able to understand, is it really green? There are many different shades of green, or maybe some of it is actually brown. So maybe that's something, an area, definitely the metrics side of things and the data side of things that tech can help to drive. Is that true?
I think it's true. I mean, to be honest with you, it's a little bit of a process. I think in the early days, perhaps companies used, greenwashing, and, it was a little bit more of a marketing tool. But I think increasingly people are, certainly some corporations are shifting away or sort of expanding what they're doing beyond just using it as a marketing tool and really changing their business model. And there's a number of reasons for this. One good example is Larry Fink's, the CEO of BlackRock, his letter to all CEOs encouraging them and essentially saying that they will be judged, with other factors, not just in terms of their financials and their valuations. I think that certainly putting pressure on companies. I think the market itself is showing that the market is willing to reward companies that take ESG and sustainability seriously. It's willing to reward them and show out performance versus their peers who are perhaps aren't doing enough from an ESG perspective and maybe just using it as a marketing tool. So I think that's, the pressures will eventually incentivize organizations, be it asset managers or the corporates, the businesses, to change the way they do things.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And that brings, to the point that if, leading figures, like, Larry Fink from BlackRock with 7 trillion AUM under their belt, and figures like Ray Dalio are coming out very vocally to talk about how sustainable finance needs to be a major red thread going through that portfolio. It really is time for people to move from, a PR agenda to looking at this, how to embrace this as an investment agenda. Now, turning to the clean tech lady here, Ines, Miss Clean Tech. How do you see, the tech side of things moving ahead? Have you slightly different perspective to share with us, perhaps?
Yeah. So yeah, I totally agree. Your point. First, to finish on the data take, I think that now and even more than before, corporates and any kind of stakeholders, including investors, are required to evidence the impact. And so moving away from a very ESG compliance scoring perspective to more a core business perspective. So as a corporate, what is my impact, positive and negative, how it can be impacted by external risks, and what is my contribution of my core business. So the products I manufacture, and not only the way I manufacture the products, is extremely important. And and definitely tech can enable even more investors to mobilize capital to finance these activities as soon as you have more accurate evidence of their concrete impact. But to the clean tech, so there are many clean techs that are available, commercially available and scalable. So, but there are different types of assets in terms of size, in terms of risk profile. So a new tech means for bankers, for example, debt providers to understand the risks as well. So there is a lot to learn also for the banking industry and their investors, and a lot of innovation as well needed. So more in terms of fintech to be able to massify, to aggregate assets, to reach like envelopes and volumes that are high enough to mobilize larger capital pockets, so even large investors. So hopefully that impact, what we call impact investing, which is usually the core business of small impact funds, can be scalable and can be also mainstream business for larger institutions. And definitely clean tech, and more specifically energy tech, are probably the most bankable right now technologies that could be deployed at scale. So I'm talking about electric mobility, energy efficiency in buildings, which is huge, but also green shipping, infrastructure in transportation, any kind of transportation, obviously, without mentioning renewable power, which is kind of mainstream right now. So compared to other sustainability topics like gender equality or access to water, those opportunities are, I guess, in my opinion, less bankable, less investable. So mobilizing the green trillions would be probably a progressive process. So starting to a more focused, I would say, scope on bankable activity right now, and as long as their technologies get more mature, you will be able to mobilize like further and other capital. But I say that even with the COVID, we have a lot of social aspects that need, financial capital to be mobilized. Trying to start with the bankable or business opportunities would probably be an easier way to test the business case and by first examples to mobilize larger investment funds or banks to channel those capital flows on sustainable activities.
Yeah, thank you, Ines. I think it's interesting to note that under E, S, and G, the E seems to have a bit more investable opportunities, whether it be in energy transition, in clean energy, and others. So hopefully the S and the G side of things will eventually also catch up, but no doubt the shift is really happening, right? The way we see it across the board. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, thank you. Now, I'd like to turn to Tilo as investor. Tilo, can you tell us a little bit about, how tech might have shaped and moved further ahead this agenda? I noticed that you just invested in a blockchain company. Are there specific verticals of technology that you see as particularly promising in advancing the sustainable finance agenda?
I think in general, when it comes to sustainable finance, I think we all appreciate and like and see more and more that it is moved from nice to have to must have. And I think nobody can afford in these days to not address this topic and make clear where his standpoint is in the end of the day. And I think with my example that I made earlier, it became clear that this really moved from nice to have to must have. I think that benefits all of us and the entire society. When I look at technology, I think there are kind of quick wins. And I think also technologies and services that just make it easier for people to make an impact. I mean, as we're talking a lot about fintech and finance here today, when I think about a company like Bunk, which is also like a challenger bank from the Netherlands, what they do is very simple. They say, for every $100 you spend, we plant a tree, right? And it's something that has a very low barrier of entry. You don't have to make, as a customer, difficult decisions, or you have to a lot of think about. You just know when you have this green credit card, you do something good. And I think this kind of, let's call it gamification, it's very important to really mobilize not just the green trillions, but millions and millions of people that they're really making an impact to make it as easy as possible for everyone to make his little or be a little part of it and make the world a better place in this case. And there are, of course, other examples. For example, here in Germany, we have the so-called Tomorrow Bank, which when you invest with them and your bank there, they really commit that they 100% only investing in sustainability and sustainable projects, or other companies like Eco3, where they invite people to become tree owners through investing in trees via digital wallets, etc. So that's, I think, the B2C side that I see and I'm very happy about. There are more and more really end consumer products with a great gamification to really bring millions of people in to make an impact and really reach out to people that maybe not even had it on the radar. On the B2B and technical side, I mean, I think my investment, as you mentioned, with the blockchain company, it's maybe a good example. I mean, first of all, there is a new technology. And blockchain, of course, everyone is talking about. Well, what they're actually doing is they're helping industrial manufacturers. You know, they have all these big machines like turbines and things like that. And in the old days, it was very inefficient, not sustainability. They just charged some, and only big companies could afford it. But now with this blockchain technology, they really can make like a charge only when you're actually using it and for what using it, for what do you use it, right? So it's much more sustainable, and you can give access to all these big manufacturers. Also, maybe a startup can now use these kind of manufacturing tools and turbines and whatever they have. So it's really a kind of new product category, a new business model for all these Mittelstand companies, and they're giving access and new business models that you could never be before. And by the way, I like also that the CEO is female, the CTO is female. So there are a lot of check boxes where I really thought that something really worse also in the midst of a pandemic to make this kind of investment. A company called ZK Systems, you can check them out. And it's really a new category with equipment as a service. We all know software as a service, right? But this is now equipment as a service. So it's all about utilization for a better, smarter, more sustainable way. And I'm very happy with this company, and hope we can make them rise and shine to our efforts. But I think that's a great example where all these kind of check boxes come together. In general, I mean, of course, categories, when I look at mobility, transportation, I mean, when I see a lot of companies also here, you know, we Germans, we love efficiency and effectiveness, right? So we have a lot of logistics companies that try to really make sure that all these empty containers that are shipped around the world are used more properly. Yesterday was a big finance round for an air cargo startup that really makes sure that the use of all the airplanes, if they have to be in the air, then they should be used in a most efficient way. So a lot of amazing companies, and I'm really excited to be part of it and helping them not only get the fame with the PR set, but also the money that they can fulfill their mission.
I think that's great, Tilo, because you mentioned something that is really close to my heart. You know, you said, how do you actually make it easy, you know, to mobilize the trillions and to mobilize more people onto this? And every little step counts. It could be a green credit card. It could be a green, you know, kind of mobile wallet that enables more tree planting. And certainly at GoImpact, it's a platform to try to make impact easy, make people access more information, access more investable opportunities, and also through investor education, which I think in some ways is grossly lacking. The more informed an investor is, the better able they are to mobilize the capital. So we all try to plug some of these gaps, and ultimately sustainable finance, here's my little take on it. It's investing in the future you like to live in, investing in the future you like to see. I think that's quite important, you know, element of that. Now, we can go on talking like this forever, but unfortunately, we don't have all the time in the world, you know. So I want to make sure that none of the panelists goes away without leaving the audience with their, you know, key takeaway from the COVID. Now, as we all know, the new normal after COVID probably won't look exactly the same as the normal we left behind. So what do you think would be the key takeaway on this, you know, driving sustainable finance in the new normal post-COVID? Maybe I start with the lady first, Ines?
Yeah, if I would just pick one word, I would say systemic. I guess with this situation, we realized how interdependent we are between countries, because we live in very complex supply chains that are global. So we are relying on different resources globally. We are used to travel quite a lot in some regions, etc. So we realize how interdependent we are geographically, and also how much social aspects could have environmental aspects. And I guess we witness that as human beings, we have huge impact also on ecosystems. So having this ability to think like systematically and think, okay, sustainable finance as of now was just a sphere within the financial world, can have a lot of impacts across value chains and across asset classes. We talked about green credit card, we talked about wealth management, about banking, about very different investments and investors and type of capitals. And I guess if we have this ability to think systematically and to see, okay, how that technology can be leveraged in other sector. You just mentioned equipment as a service. We have seen many X as a service models, and now we see that they could be leveraged and scalable in other sectors. And this ability to connect the dots how social and environmental aspects are interlinked, how financial and corporate world, the real economy work are also interlinked. It would help us maybe to make more consistent and strategic decision to drive that sustainability finance, sustainable finance journey.
Thank you, Ines. Definitely, the systemic cracks that COVID has exposed would really cause, the whole systemic shift in terms of how we move this agenda. Thank you so much. Can we turn to Alex, please?
Yes, thank you. I guess from a wealth management perspective, I would focus on awareness and engagement. I think, as we've spoken quite a bit on today, retail investors' appetite to understand and to learn more and to invest from a sustainability and ESG context is growing. And as we said, it's here to stay. I guess that the big gap is that they don't have access to enough information, clarity, consistency. Through a number of surveys, that the same message emerges, is that there's demand from retail investors for ESG, but actually their wealth managers are poorly versed in terms of what it means, in terms of providing the necessary information, and to your earlier point, Helene, in terms of educating. It's not just about educating investors, it's also about educating their wealth managers. And I think with COVID, this is a great opportunity to build on that and to help people better understand what is out there, help build their awareness. And I think also in return, retail investors, given their collective size, do have the leverage and the capability to engage in return with their wealth managers and their consumer banks to actually demand more choice in terms of ESG products. Because I think to date, we said that there's decent enough conversation with prospects, but I think banks can certainly strengthen their ESG offering. Again, in terms of education, awareness, but also in terms of the product choice that they offer to retail investors. And of course, Quantifeed is always here to help build those digital channels of distribution from consumer bank to the actual end consumer and help deliver better financial futures for everyone. And if it's an ESG context, obviously from sustainability and what's good for the planet point of view.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. I'm delighted to hear such alignment because, learning modules and the learning management system is exactly what GoImpact has been working on. And it's not just educating the investors, as you said. It's also about educating the wealth managers, the intermediaries. The finance industry as an intermediary for this would be absolutely an essential group of stakeholders to educate and to equip them with the necessary knowledge and the necessary narrative in order to take this agenda forward. So thank you for that. We are fully aligned on that. Now, I'd like to turn to Tilo now. Tilo, what are some of your thoughts on this in terms of the key takeaway?
I see definitively that it was what is still an accelerator for digitalization in general. So I think things came up to speed that usually would have taken maybe 1, 2, 3 years. Now, within this 2 months now where we have been here in Europe in lockdown, it was really a kind of Kickstarter for the entire digitization. Is it homeschooling? Is it companies are thinking about digital tools, about how they can make the home office situation better for their employees? And even the most conservative companies now really thought about how they can maybe collaborate with the startup, what kind of digital tools they can access to. They realized that maybe a lot of business travel is actually not necessary because you can do it like we do it here, even an entire conference completely digital. So I think it was really an awakening, even for a lot of conservative and more backwards oriented people, and I think that helps our entire industry having kind of new thoughts and having kind of new push when it comes to an open-mindedness for all these new endeavors that we have ahead of us. And I think it shows that we also, when we all work together and put our brains together, that we can actually achieve much more. Everyone is in their own silo and just thinking about their company and their employee. I think working together, collaborating, that's really was for, I think, many people an aha moment, that things can be thought differently, that it is possible to act differently and still maintaining good relationships and keep your business running. So overall, my key takeaway, sometimes it needs such an impact like a pandemic to really accelerate things. In this case, I think it was a big boost for digitization. I mean, look at the numbers from Zoom and all these tools that really skyrocketed. And I think that's super clear that it also has, of course, a dramatic impact on other things like retail, for example, right? People now, of course, tested every single delivery service that it's available. Of course, where light is, there's also shadow, but I think it really was an accelerator for bringing our entire society into the future.
Yes, thank you so much. I think that's so important, Tilo, because you have to stay relevant. It's either, you be relevant or you are out. So digitization is definitely the big wave pushing ahead the agenda. So in the essence of time, I think there could be some questions from the audience here. Maybe I can, everyone can just take, a few seconds to let people know about what is the easiest way to reach you, your Twitter handle, your website, and so on. So maybe ladies first, Ines.
Yes, thank you, Helene. So you can follow our LinkedIn page, ENEA Consulting community, and you will see we have very often publications on the different topics we work on, and other contributions we do with some of our partners.
Okay, thank you. Alex, how to reach you the best?
You can reach me on LinkedIn, alex.ypsilanti, or just search for Alex Ypsilanti. The spelling is there, but it's YPSILANTI for anyone struggling. So LinkedIn is good. For information on Quantifeed, obviously our website, www.quantifeed.com. There's a huge amount of information there in terms of the value proposition and the platforms we've built for banks. But yeah, that's LinkedIn and website, always good. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Tilo, how to best reach you?
Yeah, very easy. When you type in my name on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you feel comfortable, it's easy to connect with me and to reach out. Of course, we have also a podcast. You find them also under my name or the name Business Class. Our company website, PIABO.net. So very easy. And let me say one last word, as we talked so much about new technology, the future. I think we all should not forget, with mobilizing all these new trillions and all these new initiatives and technologies, it's very important that we take the society alongside with us and don't let them behind. It's very important that we explain what's going on, how they can participate, that we not leave them in fear, that we're really mobilizing them to be part of it and see it as everyone's responsibility.
Thank you so much, Tilo. And finally, from me, you can find me on LinkedIn, Helene Lee. You can also reach me on my Twitter handle, Helene _WPLI, or you can go to our GoImpact website, www.goimpact.today. So, on that, I'd like to thank each and every one of the panelists for sharing your very insightful journey here. And thank you again to WHub for hosting this Impact Summit.